In this session, we are going to study mishipat and chedakah in prophets. If you see the history of Israel, these people, Israel, seemed not practice mishipat and chedakah, especially the rich group, the powerful group, almost never practice mishipat and chedakah, justice and righteousness of God. That's why God sent a lot of prophets to proclaim that the people, rich people, and powerful people, and politicians, social leaders, religious leaders, totally break the mishipat and chedakah. People, actually, if you are in covenant relations, you must help your poor neighbor Israel, weak neighbor Israel, especially God ordered the people that you need to help the widows, the orphans, and the strangers. These three groups are considered the poorest and weakest group in the society of Israel. That's why rich people must help them, must distribute their share, their goods. But actually, if you see the history of Israel, people didn't do that. So if they don't help the weak group, this is breaking the mishipat and chedakah, especially chedakah, righteousness. If you read Leviticus chapter 18, it is about love, hesed. Then in practicing hesed of God, so you must be holy also there. You see, holy. The way of your life must be very, very holy. Holy means separate from aliens, separate from strangers, separate from non-Israelites. So this is love of God. But also, if you keep love of God, if you practice love of God, it is righteous to God. So, but people never did that. That's why a lot of prophets were sent to judge these people. If you see Isaiah chapter 9, what is happening? It's Micah. Okay, let's go to Micah. Micah chapter 2 verses 1 to 5. I'm going to read. Micah chapter 2 verses 1 to 5. Doom to those who plot evil, who go to bed dreaming of crimes. As soon as it's morning, they are off, full of energy, doing what they've planned. They covet fields and grab them, find homes and take them. They bully the neighbor and his family, see people only for what they can get out of them. God has had enough. He says, I have some plans of my own. Disaster because of the interbreeding evil. Your necks are on the line. You're not walking away from this. It's doomsday for you. Mocking bullets will be sung of you, and you yourselves will sing the blues. Our lives are ruined. Our homes and lands auctioned off. They take everything, leave us nothing. All is sold to the highest bidder, and there will be no one to stand up for you, no one to speak for you before God and his jury. Yes. And chapter 3. Chapter 3, verse 1. Listen, leaders of Jacob, leaders of Israel, don't you know anything of justice? Haters of good, lovers of evil. Isn't justice in your job description? But you skin my people alive. You rip the meat off their bones. You break up the bones, chop the meat, and throw it in a pot for cannibals too. The time coming, though, when the same leaders will cry out for help to God, but he won't listen. He'll turn his face the other way because of their history of evil. Right, here in these verses, actually God and Micah is revealing what was going on in the history of Israel in BC. In BC, actually, 8th century, a lot of people, right, especially poor, rich people, they accumulate a lot of land and house. According to Isaiah chapter 5, verse 8, they add house to house and they increase land and land. They never return the houses and land in Jubilee. They totally broke chedakah, righteousness of God. That's why Prophet Micah is revealing their sin, their crimes. No. Chapter 3, verses 8 and 9. But me, I am filled with God's power, filled with God's spirit of justice and strength, ready to confront Jacob's crime and Israel's sin. The leaders of Jacob, the leaders of Israel are leaders contemptuous of justice, who twist and distort right living. Yes, they totally twist. They distort justice and righteousness of God. In Amos also the same. Amos 5. Amos proclaimed this way. Chapter 5, verse 24. Do you know what I want? I want justice, oceans of it. I want fairness. This is righteous. I want righteousness, rivers of it. That's what I want. That's all what I want. Yeah, Amos proclaimed that God wants from Israel justice and righteousness. Verse 7, chapter 5, Amos chapter 5, verse 7. Woe to you, turn justice to vinegar and stomp righteousness into the mud. Do you realize where you are? You are in a cosmos star flung with constellations by God. Yeah, it's like the rich people totally, they broke justice and righteousness. They threw off justice and righteousness of God. That's why they will be judged. That's why in the especially minor prophets, you'll find the term the day of the Lord. What is the day of the Lord? The day of the Lord for the people who keep justice and righteousness of God. The day of the Lord will be the day of salvation. But to those who totally broke justice and righteousness of God, so the day of the Lord will be the day of judgment. It will be doomsday. Yeah, because the basic office, basic job of prophets is to accuse the sins and crimes of the people of Israel, especially their leaders. So always prophets did that. Isaiah did that. Jeremiah did that. Micah, Amos, and all the prophets did that. Rahab did that. Elijah did that also. So especially BC 8th century prophets focused on accusing justice and righteousness of God. Isaiah, Amos, Micah. These three prophets. But usually Hosea is relatively focused on Hesed of God. Anyway, so as a result of their breaking justice and righteousness of God, they will be taken to Babylon. In Micah, okay, let's go to Micah again. Micah. Micah. In Micah 2 and 3, that actually the rich people, they measure their measure how big their lands are. How big? They try to satisfy themselves by measuring the big land. Oh, I have this big land. Likewise, they will be measured by Babylonian people. They'll be measured by Babylonians and they will be taken off to Babylon, which means they'll be judged by God. Because Israel totally broke justice and righteousness of God, they were punished. It is already prophesied in Leviticus chapter 26 and Deuteronomy chapter 28. As a result of breaking the covenant, they will be they'll get the covenant curse. That's why, as a result of covenant curse, they were sent. They were taken to Babylon. Okay, it's up to you. So next session, we are going to study righteousness and justice in the New Testament, especially in Jesus Christ. Thank you.